Hi folks, happy Friday to you. Welcome to the weekend. I trust you've had a good reading week. And on that topic, what have I been reading this week? At the weekend, I finished This Alien Shore by C.S. Friedman on audiobook, and I really enjoyed it. So in this book, the setting is that there's been a first wave of human interstellar expansion, but that wave failed when it became clear that the process of faster-than-light travel had dire consequences at a genetic level. There were mutations, sometimes minor, sometimes grotesque, and all points in between. Panicked, Earth abandoned its colonies, leaving them to their fates to deal with whatever form their variations took. Fast forward several hundred years and interstellar travel is now safe again, sort of, and the means of doing so is monopolised by something called the Outspace Guild, who have complete control over the technology. Despite that monopoly control, they seem to play it straight. Their mission is to reunite humanity, reconnecting all of those lost colonies, including Earth. In this universe, technology has advanced to the point that every person has a computer installed in their brain pretty much at birth, which can be embellished with further brainware as needed when they get a bit older. We're introduced to Jenneke Shido, a teenage girl, just as her world falls apart. The space habitat that she lives on is under attack, and she needs to flee, helped to an escape pod by her tutor. As the book progresses, we get more information about her background, which turns out to have been an experiment by the Shido Corporation. As a result of her trials during those experiments, Jenneke has multiple personalities, each effectively acting as a different character in the book as they surface and take control of Jenneke's body from time to time. The story is about Jenneke's flight from various parties who seek her out. She may hold the secret to interstellar flight, the potential to end the Guild's monopoly. I'd heard good things about This Alien Shore and I wasn't disappointed. It's a space opera, no question, but Friedman does some interesting things with it. The variations, the mutations have taken different courses on different worlds, and Garan, which is the home planet of the Outspace Guild, has made a virtue of the resulting neurodiversity. Several of the secondary characters are from Garan, and we get a good idea how their society works, with many of the challenges that autistic folks face in our everyday life baked into their way of life. And I thought that was fascinating and rather well done. To add to the fun, there's a community of hackers, mainly petty thieves and hellraisers, but wouldn't you know it, one of the few groups willing to help Jenneke stay one step ahead of those chasing her. Whilst a lot of the action centres around chasing Jenneke around the galaxy, I enjoyed a secondary thread, which is a race against time to track down the source of a virus which is affecting Guild pilots and threatening interstellar trade and cohesion. We get a couple of glimpses into what awaits the unprepared in hyperspace in the INIC, so-called, to what Guild pilots and any who seek to supplant them must face whilst in there. Overall, I enjoyed it very much, helped by the audiobook narration by Kathleen McKinney, which I thought was pretty good. There is a sequel, This Virtual Night, written about 20 years later, I think, and I understand that she's working on a third now. I enjoyed my time with This Alien Shore enough to want to read both of those, and I should try to get hold of them. A rather different beast next, The Sea and Summer by George Turner. The framing for this one is interesting. There's an archaeological expedition and it's 1,000 years in our future. And we're amongst the stumps of formerly tall buildings in decayed remnants of Melbourne, Australia. One of the parties has written a novel based on what she has been able to piece together of how life was in this corner of Australia as things went to shit in the 2060s. And the bulk of The Sea and Summer is in fact that manuscript, with one or two flash forwards back to the archaeological dig in the future peppered in. In this book, runaway levels of automation, of artificial intelligence have driven ever higher levels of unemployment, with financial security a thing of the past. Existence is precarious, society divided as usual between the haves and the have-nots, the sweet and the swill in this case, and all of that is against the background of increasingly severe climate change, which in this book manifests itself mainly as coastal flooding. We follow one family, the Conways, as they teeter on the edge. The man of the house loses his job and ends it all, sending Mrs. Conway and her two boys down into the fringe, a down-a-hill area on the edge of swill territory. The teeming millions of the swill live in purpose-built tower blocks, built in a hurry as part of a process of managed decline. The Conways live in fear of being forced out of their new home and into the swill proper. Billy Kovacs is a tower boss, a fixer and black marketeer, a sort of Fagin character. And he appears at the Conway's house offering his services in what appears to be a protection racket. And that's exactly what it is, but it's one that the Conways actually need. It's dangerous in the fringe. And Billy Kovacs might actually be the most interesting character in the book. He forms a bond with the Conways, taking a particular liking to Francis, the younger of the two boys. And recognising his extraordinary ability with figures, he sets him up with Nola Parks, a legitimate businesswoman with illegitimate black market connections. The story follows the fates of the Conway boys, Mrs. Conway and Billy, as they are buffeted by events. I really enjoyed George Turner's writing. It's an easy read, his prose is very approachable, and the book is well paced. It's almost like a thriller at times, the sort of book that you could find yourself unable to put down. It's also smart. The decaying world he describes is well thought through, it's nuanced, and the rather obvious sweet versus swill divide is in fact quite blurred. And it becomes clearer that what remains of a functioning government sees the future of Australia, of humanity in total really, in the far more numerous swill and not the sweet. The structure of the book is interesting, the framing is part of it, but also the point of view switches chapter by chapter, so we get a different lens, a different perspective. Mostly one of the Conways, but also a few of the other characters that they come into contact with, including Billy. The picture of decay, of deterioration, of encroaching peril in the form of rising floodwaters is well done, I thought. I enjoyed the rich cast of characters, the way of life in the swill. On the face of it, it's dirty, unhealthy and poor, but it's also riotous, happy, and much more of a community than the fearful sweet. I really love this book. George Turner was born in 1916, I think, and was close to 70 when he wrote The Sea and Summer, and I think he died not long after that. But he pours all of the craft that he's developed over a career as a writer and critic into it, and I really recommend it. It's a good book. An early example of climate change fiction. Really good. Next, I listened to Nova by Samuel Delany, and that's a book that I've been meaning to read for ages. I recently got hold of this copy, which found its way onto my TBR for February. But in the end, with an eye on February being quite a short month, I thought I would cheat a little bit by coughing up an Audible credit so that I could listen to it on audiobook. It's not a thick book, so I was done in just a few days. The audiobook is narrated by Stefan Rudnicki, who also narrated Lord Valentine's Castle, which I really enjoyed last year. Rudnicki has a very distinctive voice, which I think adds to the experience. I will say that he does need to work on his Australian accent, though, which is really terrible, although fortunately only makes a couple of appearances in the book. Anyway, the story. We're 1,000 or so years in the future, and humanity is split broadly into three factions. We've got Draco, which incorporates Earth. Then we've got the Pleiades Federation, which is a bit more enterprising, a bit more frontier-oriented. Plus, there's the outer colonies that are even more frontier than the Pleiades Federation. The leading family in Draco are the Reds, who control Redshift, a company that has a monopoly on starship engines. And in the Pleiades, it's the Von Rays. Nova, a standalone space opera, is a story of a long-running feud, a struggle to break the dominance of the Reds over interstellar travels, which the Del Reys believe will ultimately result in the decline of the much more dispersed Pleiades Federation, if something isn't done. Lork Von Ray is an adventuring type. He's a former starship racing pilot and veteran of more than one mission to harvest Illyrion from a supernova. And Illyrion is the mystical ingredient for faster-than-light travel. He assembles a crew for his latest attempt, and it's quite an eclectic bunch, ranging from Mouse, who's a gypsy boy from Earth with a gift for playing a syrinx, which is a strange sort of musical instrument that also engenders also engages other senses. You can see things and feel things as you're listening to it, and that becomes important at the end of the book. Then there's also an intellectual who dreams of writing a novel, which by this time is a long-lost art form. And then there are several others as well. Ranged against Lork are Prince and Ruby Red, who will stop at nothing to prevent Lork from breaking their family monopoly. Prince is rather well-drawn baddie. He has a prosthetic arm, which he's hypersensitive about, exacting creative and drawn-out revenge against people who make even an innocuous remark or even merely curious about his arm. We quickly get the impression that he's rather unstable mentally. I thought that Nova gave us a great window into life in this future where advanced science and technology is meshed with the esoteric. Tarot card readings, for example, are entirely mainstream and frequently used by all and sundry to decide what to do next. I've read one other Delany book, Babel 17, which I did enjoy, but I think Nova is much more up my alley, possibly helped by Rudnicki's audiobook narration. There weren't many space operas in the 1960s. Science fiction was too busy getting serious and new wavy, but Delany did a great job keeping the flame alight, burning Nova bright, in fact, a stellar candle for others to follow. I found his prose style colourful, in this case adding to my enjoyment rather than getting in the way of the story. I'm looking at you, John Harrison. I enjoyed it. It was good, nice, and well worth a read. Tell me what you managed to read this week. Is there anything that you particularly recommend to us? Do let us know in the comments down below. Next, a new segment, probably not every week, an occasional as-needed segment. I get contacts from time to time from a self-published author offering to send me a copy in one form or another of their book. In any case, it can be a bit awkward as I already have hundreds of unread books, and often it's an ebook, which I don't have the means to read, nor do I particularly want one. So there's a limit to how helpful I can really be. However, having enjoyed a self-published trilogy recently, which was The Way Stations by Nick Scrimgeour, rather than be a total killjoy, I have said recently that I can at least mention their books in my weekly updates. So I hereby declare a new segment that we'll call Indy Corner, which will appear from time to time as and when I have something to say. First up this week is the Jovian Madrigals by Jenneke de Beer, which I gather is the first of an intended trilogy. The Jovian Madrigals tells the story apparently of a human colony on Callisto, one of Jupiter's moons. Scientists there have developed nanobots which grant effective immortality to those who've had them injected. And for reasons that aren't completely clear to me, and Jenneke didn't explain in our brief email exchange, those enhanced in this way are no longer allowed to return to Earth. The author says that this is a tale of what artificial immortality means for humanity, of what it means for life at the edge of our expansion into space. Next is Pilgrims by Leonard, which Michael humbly states has taken the sci-fi world by storm. Pilgrims tells the tale of a washed-up Latin teacher who gets thrust into the centre of a first contact scenario when Latin-speaking aliens, of all things, land at the Vatican claiming to be Catholics. Now, as I said to Michael, much like humour and science fiction, I'm a little bit allergic to religion mixed with science fiction. That said, I did enjoy The Sparrow recently. That certainly has a heavy dose of religion. And of course, there's The Canticle for Leibowitz as well, which I also enjoyed. It's important to say that I haven't read either of these indie books, so I can't vouch for their quality either way. But if you like the sound of either of those, then I'll put some links in the description for this video so that you can find them easily. Okay, briefly then, channel stuff next. Subs are at 4,680, which is up 65 on last week, and we're edging ever closer to 5,000, which would be fabulous. If you're one of those 65, or if you've just stumbled across my channel for the first time today, then welcome. I'm John, and I focus on collecting, reading, and waffling on about science fiction books, old and new. Comment of the week this week was from Clash5J, who suffered through one of my earliest videos, a rather tortured review of Inverted World by Christopher Priest. And at the time they watched it, they were yet to read any Christopher Priest, and I think we agreed that this would be a great place to start. They were also at pains to say, fortunately for all of us, that I am much more comfortable in front of a camera now than I was back then, which is getting on for nearly 2 years ago. Thank you to Clash for taking the time to leave a comment, and to all of you that do the same week in, week out. I really appreciate it. Let's take a quick look at what was on the channel last week. On Sunday, there was a themed video taking a look at some really fantastic alternate history books, a corner of science fiction that I particularly appreciate. And then on Tuesday, there was a video looking at some lucky finds, books that I found out in the wild that have turned out to be worth a little bit more, sometimes a lot more, than I paid for them. If you haven't had a chance to watch either of those, then I commend them to you as worthy of your time, and you can find the links to them on my channel page. In the bookbind department, it's been a fairly busy week. I received a gift from a viewer. It was always much appreciated. Plus, there's been quite a bit of online ordering. I have, as we sit here now on Friday afternoon, I have 8 or 9 books in various stages of winging their way to me, some from the US and some from closer to home. And I've been to my usual Oxfam bookshop a couple of times recently, and I've come away with nothing. Well, strictly speaking, not nothing. I have come away with 2 or 3 books which I'm in the process of selling. I either already had them or I'm not directly interested in them. The key being that all of them seem to be worth several times more than I paid for them. Very much in that lucky find category that the video was talking about. In fact, one of them sold just yesterday evening, and I cleared in the process of doing that 20 quid for a £2.49 find. I've no real desire to become some kind of book dealer, but as a way to part fund my own book habit, this is kind of a no-brainer. The to-be hauled pile currently stands at 16 books. Let's take a quick look ahead. On Sunday, there will be February's book haul, which I think is going to be a doozy. And then during the week, I think, will be the video that I've been threatening for a little while, looking at audience recommendations that I have harvested from the comments from the whole of last year. I still haven't quite finished going through the year. I'm just about at mid-October at this point, and I haven't really thought about how that video is going to work. I don't particularly want to duplicate the audience survey that we did at the end of last year, and I don't want it to just be a simple list. So I need to do a little bit of thinking about how that will work. But that's all there really is bubbling away in the pot for the short term. Longer range, I have it in mind to do a follow-up to the hard SF video that did so well a few months back. There's plenty of books that I could have included in that I can use to make a sequel. I have a long list of suitable books identified. I've got to narrow it down to 10, I think I'll aim for. And I expect that video to appear towards the end of February. Then there'll be the usual month-end content, the TBR selection for March and the wrap-up for February, which is shaping up to be a pretty good one, I think. So what will I be reading in the coming week? I'll be reading Stars and Bones. I say reading. I'll be listening to Stars and Bones by Gareth Powell on audiobook. I do have a physical copy of that on its way to me, but this is available on Audible as part of my membership for free. So I'm listening to that. It's a space opera. I've only listened to the first chapters. I've got a long training run to do tomorrow, so I probably should get that finished, I think, whilst I'm out tomorrow. In physical book form, I have about 100 pages, maybe a bit less, to read of The Secret of Life by Paul McCauley, which I'm thoroughly enjoying. It is reminding me in tone a little bit like Kim Stanley Robinson. There's quite a lot of science. Some of it's set on Mars. There's a lot of microbiology, which is, I think, Paul McCauley's area of expertise back in the day. Because I like Kim Stanley Robinson, I'm also enjoying this. It might put some people off, perhaps. But I think Paul McCauley is a pretty underappreciated author, and I'm pleased to be reading, gradually working my way through his backlist. It's pretty good. Anyway, more on that next week. And then when I finish Secret of Life, I'm going to be moving on slightly trepidatiously to book 2 in the Amarantine trilogy by Tom Toner. This is The Weight of the World. I enjoyed the first one, but it was a little bit hard work at times. I'm hoping that with the passage of a bit of time and having read the first one, that it won't seem like quite such an alien setting, and I'll be a little bit more oriented. We'll see. I'm expecting it to be a wild ride nonetheless. And then once I've finished the Gareth Powell book, I should be moving on to Doomsday Book by Connie Willis. This is one of her time travel tetralogy. I think there are 4 of them. I've read All Clear, and I've read Blackout and All Clear, which I really enjoyed. I think not last year before, some of my favourite books of 2023. Really love them, and I hear good things about this one too. So I'm looking forward to listening to that. It's quite a thick book, and it's going to take me, and I think it will take me longer than the week to get through on audiobook. So that's all I have planned. Should be a full week, and if I get through all of those physical books next week, then I think I have 3 left on my TBR pile for February, with a week left to go by the time we get to the end of next week. So I may or may not quite get through them all. We'll see. As usual, thank you for watching. Have a wonderful weekend. Until next time, goodbye for now.